right, well, welcome everybody. I hope everyone's had an amazing show. I know I'm really super psyched actually at how many people I see here. I had heard that it might have been like one table by now.
You can see people?
I see a few.
These bright lights, I see nobody. So if you want to heckle me or throw a bird my way, you're good. I won't see it.
So what we're here to talk about is winning the cost battle. And I guess before we get started, just to make sure that we're not, trying to solve something that isn't an issue, is there anyone sitting out in the audience that feels like they are winning the cost battle and they do not need any support in trying to understand what we're doing? Because if you are, you can come up here. We can get extra shares.
Yeah.
You can come tell us what you're doing. But as Zia mentioned, I think that the conversation around the cost of development, real estate, has been ongoing for a long, long time. And then obviously we had, COVID created a different environment for us. And now, very recently, we're starting to look at some other things that are happening within the market that really put a lot of concern and a little bit of, worry into the system. And so I think what we thought is it would be a good opportunity to get a couple of, veterans. And what I also like is, veterans from, different built companies as well, right? So we've got Aaron, from Dutch Brothers, and that's, that's all owned system growing, 1,000 units or so, 106, what is it, 181 you're going to do this year?
Yeah, we should do at least 181 this year.
Yeah, and then we've got Kevin, who's of course with GoTo Foods. We've got 7 brands and like a baby squirrel brand trying to grow up. And
Trying to.
we've got 6,700 units, and they're doing 300 plus
Yes.
this year. And so what I want to do is they obviously are the smart end of the stick. So I wanted to pitch it out there, and Kevin, I wanted to ask. So one of the things when I think about it is you've got 7 brands. So potentially you have 7 chickens running in 7 directions, and trying to understand how you leverage and take advantage of the fact that you have that to create consistency and maybe some pricing control.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a journey for us for, I don't know, the last 3 to 4 years. And it was just that we had 7 brands operating in 7 different silos. And I think at one time we looked, we had 7 different subway tile specs for each brand. And I'm like, what are we doing? So we're going through every single brand, every single kind of commodity that we, normally you would have as a national account or whatever, and trying to basically streamline those specifications and standardize those. Everything from tile to microwaves to under-counter refrigeration, walk-in coolers. So it's a lot of work, as you can imagine. And, trying to get 7 different brands with their 7 different ideas. We never want to compromise on food quality or consistency or anything like that. But if this microwave works just as well for all 7 brands, wouldn't you rather save $400 on a microwave and then multiply that by 300? So that it starts to really add up. And of course, our leadership likes to see those big savings numbers. So
Absolutely, absolutely. So for you, Aaron, it's a little bit. It's kind of like one best way, right? And trying to figure out how are you getting predictability into your system.
One of the biggest challenges for us is because our buildings are all very cookie cutter. We work from a straight prototype design. They don't change very much. We go negotiate with supplier A, but I've always got a supplier B. So A, to kind of negotiate them against each other. B, I always say, what can I do to be a better customer? We talk about how do we save money, but really what can I do to be a better customer, and how can I make the supplier's life a little bit easier? The reason I want their life to be easier is because long term, I'm gonna be able to save some money. I think the other thing for us is as we start to examine products, we have a really robust testing program now. If I want to try a new floor, I actually have a full protocol to be able to put in and test, and not just, hey, we installed the floor and we called it a test. We actually have a real protocol to be able to do so. We want to install a small oven, like we're doing these Turbo Chefs and Mary Chef ovens. What do we do to install those? How do we track those? Monitor the ups and the downs, because we tell you, I'm reading right here because the lights are in my eye. I'm reading right here.
Yeah.
The cost battle. Yeah, sometimes it's also about maintenance and long term, and can I get the parts and can I repair it, and how long is this thing going to last? And I'd say that we are talking to our suppliers weekly, weekly, even though it's the same products, but it's weekly that's going on.
And I'm interested around that because obviously with the development plans that you guys have, how are you leveraging just volume and how are you timing decisions? I mean, are you bullish on buying now and getting ahead of the curve on what might be coming? Or are you kind of sitting and waiting and trying to understand what is going to happen with the market? And how far out are you looking as far as making purchasing decisions?
I, it's a little difficult for us only from the standpoint of we're a franchise model, so 97% is franchise. So, our schedules are very predominant on when franchisees get their financing, when they get their leases signed, when they get whatever. But we do that on a week, to your point, we do this on a weekly basis. And weekly, we go through the entire pipeline for the year. Is this moved? Has this not moved? That then turns into a vendor report that goes out to the vendors every week. So they at least have an idea while we're not necessarily signing the contract for some of this stuff. They at least know where those projects are falling and have an idea of where they're coming. A lot of people mentioned it yesterday in their presentations. It's the unpredictability that really drives a lot of the negative aspects and that sort of thing. Um, you know, I, One of the things we've done over the past couple of years as well, though, however, is we always get every year, of course, everybody out there, somebody comes to you and go, hey, you got to get costs down. One thing we've done fairly well within our organization is gotten the organization to realize that costs are not just construction costs. They're not just equipment costs. Costs are across the board, whether it's food cost, operational costs, that sort of thing. Because again, the costs are always going to go here. If sales and foot traffic stays here, we're always going to be at a deficit. So that's something we've tried to educate within our organization is a holistic conversation. And what is the net at the end of the day, not just the capital up front. So
Absolutely, because it's a life cycle, right?
exactly.
You make some bad decisions on some things and you live with that for the next, 15 years on something.
Yeah.
Now, how about you? In the fact that you are in control really of your pipeline,
Yeah,
what can you do?
we have about 400 stores in our pipeline right now, and when I look at purchasing ahead and look at the commitments I've made with, I look at the commitments I've made with my suppliers. We like to work in tranches of about 100, and so if I'm looking at, I've committed to tile for the next 100 shops. I've committed to HVAC for the next 100 shops, and so I'm always kind of looking at a cycle that way. Because we're a young company and we're evolving quite a bit, you heard me say this quite a bit. Am I a good customer?
Yeah.
It's really easy for me to blame suppliers for everything. And if suppliers in the room, I'm sorry, I'm going to blame you. But it's we work on this prototype. Our prototype changes, I feel like every other day, right? And so I'm making a commitment for X amount of equipment, and like with the stainless guys, I'm like, what are we doing for the tables, and how are we putting this together? But then the prototype changes, and so now I've got that new version of the prototype. So now I'm committed to tables through the end of this, and then what new set of
But
tables?
what drives that change? I mean, it seems as though with your box, is a menu evolving? Is the is it,
It's a constant evolution of not only the menu, but it's also how you can look to save some labor.
yeah,
And you guys know
different equipment sets.
we are very heavily stored. It's not the word I'm looking for. We have a lot of stores in California. All right, and guys, you've seen our $21 minimum wage there in California, and that affects everybody. And so, is there a way for me to get more efficient in the stores? And is there a way for me to reduce the number of steps that we have to that we have to do? Something as simple as we do energy drinks, and our energy drinks, we've always poured them out of a can. We make our own product. It comes in a can. We can it ourselves. Well, now we're starting to put fountains in the stores. But where are we putting the fountains in the stores? Where are we putting that? How many steps is it from the drive-through window or the walk-up window to that fountain? And so that those are the things that drive that prototype change constantly. Other times is your walk-in cooler in the right spot?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always interesting that balance between being nimble, but also trying to stay as, minimize change as much as possible so that you can get some predictability. I am interested too, because, obviously the word tariff is terrifying everyone in the system. And I'm just interested whether you guys are actually, I guess what I'm trying to do is get the perception to the reality. Are you getting letters? Are you seeing actual costs elevate? I know I've talked to some suppliers and they're like, hey, the reality is if things are going to cost more for me, they're going to cost more for you. That's just kind of the way it goes. But are you seeing that stuff, that rubber hit the road yet?
It's coming. I had several conversations with a lot of our suppliers, and especially our equipment suppliers. They've pulled inventory that they had in Mexico. They went ahead and pulled it into the U.S. They're looking at their overseas manufacturing and switching those to countries that haven't been hit by the tariff yet. So it's a it's going to be a little bit different for every supplier. So yes, it's going to happen. They're telling us the letters are going to eventually come. They're just not sure yet. And to all the suppliers out there, I know you guys are trying to hold it off as much as possible, and we certainly appreciate that. But we also recognize the fact that it's coming. I mean, all of our conversations, we talk about value engineering. I like to use the word cost mitigation, quite honestly, and I think
Right.
Brian Lindley mentioned it yesterday. Um, you know, you're fighting against the rising
Yeah.
costs. So if you can at least try to make it even or a manageable percentage increase, that's what you're looking to do. I'm never going to make anything cheaper than it was before the pandemic. It's just not going to happen. So people just need to get on board with that reality. But
It's a new normal.
yeah, so it's coming, and all of our cost projections right now are predicated on this is pre-tariff, but just keep in mind that there's a percentage coming at some point in time, and more than likely it'll start hitting before. I'm thinking probably somewhere around June, July,
Yeah.
or August is where we're going to see it.
Well, what's interesting to me is I know that you go through all of these exercises to try to draw every square foot, every piece of savings. And you're talking about 1%, 2% savings, 3% savings.
Hmm.
And now you have this elephant in the room coming in that basically could erase 5 years of hard work that you did. How are you reacting to that?
Sales cures everything, right? Right.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
it's interesting. Heard the Popeyes guy talking yesterday. Brian was talking that they have the same sales expectation for their small footprint stores they do a standard prototype. Okay, but a bunch of franchisees probably don't feel the same way. But that was, my building is 900 feet, 940 feet actually. Um, I've got it valued engineered down about as tight as it can be when it's talked to like, I've got minimums for what I can do structurally when it comes to trusses and minimums for like floor tile and minimums for roofing materials. And if I added 100 feet to my building, I'm not going to add much in it. I'm not going to add much.
A lot of
But the reverse of that is I have, I've got all the bean counters and all the finance guys, and they say, well, what if you were to shrink your building by 75 feet? Okay, well, great. What if I just didn't have a damn building,
That's
right?
right.
Okay, I mean that. Yeah,
How about if we had an
okay.
umbrella and a
Yeah.
Well,
cooler box?
and
Yeah.
but we bring that up because there's a certain minimum, and there's a diminishing point of return where you've got to have something. No one's ever complained to me within reason, in all the companies I've worked with, that their stores were too big, right? I mean, and those of us have been doing this a little while. I got the gray hair, so do you. We've all seen
I
the
got none.
yeah, okay. Well, we've all seen the express versions of units, right? It's a cycle. It's like, hey, we're going to build, we're going to build a 20-seat Carl's Jr. We're going to build a 75
Mhm.
feet Carl's Jr. We're going to do a drive-through, we drive-through only, and so you see a lot of these, and it seems to be a cycle. Um, but with us, when we're talking about if we erase something, we just have to make sure we're making the best real estate decisions, and that you've heard me reference it a couple times. I'm not worried about paying for building materials or equipment. I need to make sure I'm paying for something that lasts. And we're also I'm more worried. I'm less worried about the tariff situation and getting product right now than I was 3 or 4 years ago when we just couldn't get product at
Yeah,
all.
Get
where
anything.
And I mean,
Yes.
and
supply
and
chains
I would
collapsed.
tell you I probably overpaid for everything just to be able to get it. We made commitments. Everybody in this room has probably got a horror story when it comes to switchgear, right?
Mhm.
We made commitments to switchgear and HVAC.
RTUs.
Yeah. Um, and there's at one point I couldn't get ice machines. There are a couple suppliers that I met with last week that well, actually True does all the refrigeration, all their ice machines, everything's made in the U.S. they shouldn't be affected by anything. So that's good.
That's good news.
Yeah, that's good news. But
So
I get their ice machines first. Just
that's right, exactly. The 12 they have, you get them.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well,
so
to your
go ahead.
comment about erasing 5 years of work or whatever. I mean, here's the deal. I mean, we're in the hospitality business. If you're not changing constantly, your brand's going to be irrelevant at some point in time. So, we're pretty much, every company I've ever been at, we had, we changed the letters of the acronym of the thing to be, with CVS, it was change very soon. So you're constantly changing. So, I look at it more as job security as opposed to, I just wasted, a year's worth of time. So, yeah, it's nutty, but to Aaron's point about real estate or whatnot, that's another conversation we've started having with our real estate folks as well. I'm like, look, I know the real estate battle is tough. However, if you've got a franchisee in your ear that's telling you it's too expensive, 9 times out of 10, it's too expensive because of the space that you picked and the fact that an electrical requirement of 400 amps minimum. Some of our brands are 600 amps. You're going into a retail space that only has 100 amps. You've just now cost that franchisee more money. So it's
Kevin, you kind of nailed that. That's one of the things that happens to us on a frequent basis is we like to do conversions. There's an old Burger King that's shut down, and I want to convert that into a Dutch Bros. It should be pretty easy. It's a 2,000 square foot Burger King. It's a 1,000 foot Dutch Bros. Why does it cost me more to do that at times? And one of the pieces I have to push back to my design and construction teams is, guys, there's a value that's been put on this already built building. There's a value. It's not my value. It's not your value. It's the market has driven, and this is what it's worth. And so if I can't, I'm sorry, if I can't take this and make it work, Kevin's going to go make it work and turn it into a Schlotzsky's or something, right? And so we've got to figure out how to do that. And so that's the challenge is how can we reuse something that's there. And there's benefits. Obviously, the most sustainable building is one that's already been built and things like that. But when it comes to like keeping our franchisees or even my finance guys happy with the deal, you nailed it. When money was cheap, I go take a raw piece of land with no utilities and all this, take it as is, and life is pretty good, and the cities would approve it. Now, I'm not looking. I've turned down a lot of great sites simply because I was like, no, I'm not gonna overpay, and it's a Pandora's box of what it might take to entitle or make it buildable. Forget the building, just to even make the site buildable.
right.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears a little bit because we talk a lot about and you went into this earlier. We talk a lot about winning the cost battle being hard costs, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other side of that obviously is time, right?
Absolutely.
And so what we know is that with the traditional manner in which we build things out or we go into things, really the front end is pretty predictable. We know about how long it takes us to do drawings. We know if we have good consultants about what we can do. We know when we can make decisions. We know when we can release things. And the other side of it is if we're going to stick build something, we pretty much know how long it takes us to build it if we get a good, GCO9. So it seems like there are two aspects that I'm interested in talking about. One of it is, of course, the scary middle, which is I have a set of drawings. I hand it to someone. What happens, right? And I'm interested in it because I know in talking to you, Aaron, that you have some definite opinions that on hey, how should I be interacting with the city? So I'm just interested in what your strategies are. Maybe a story. I'd like to hear it here too. And then after that, I want to follow up on a little bit on are there alternate ways to build things? And maybe wander into a little bit of modular and the dream that we thought it was going to be, and what is it? So with that, I'm just going to tee you up and let you guys
Sure. Well,
go.
my favorite thing to say to let me back up here. The cities, I hate to use the word the cities. It makes sense, but because the city sounds like a soulless place, right? And it's like, hey, I submitted to the city, and I'm waiting on the city or the county to give me
I've
my
had
permits.
cities that actually are
Our
There's
soulless.
absolutely
Yeah.
cities. Oh, you've been to Denver.
Yeah.
So one of the expectations I have for my team, and it's not for third parties, it's not, it's for my team. I want somebody in a Dutch Bros shirt or a Dutch Bros lapel pin. I want them to show up and go meet in all these communities. I want them to meet the head of economic development. I want them to meet the head of city planning. I want them to meet the mayor. I want to meet everybody they can.
Yeah.
Call a meeting, bring some drinks, bring some gift cards, Dutch Bros t-shirts, whatever it takes, teddy bears, and get a meeting and walk out of there not only with an understanding of the process. The process may suck, but at least you understand that it sucks. But you walk out of there with an understanding of the process. But better yet, you walk out of there with contact names and information, and you can make, it's like,
Yeah.
Joe, if you're the city, I can say the city sucks, but I don't ever want to say Joe sucks.
Yeah.
All right, that's not what we're going to do. And
You did want to say that. That's just
okay,
how you said it.
all right, but you
Yeah.
if you make a commitment to me that I'm going to build this in your town, you now have made a commitment to your people, and we're going to work together. So I know that sounds like like Willy Wonka-ish that I say something like that, but it really works if we start to have these conversations about what reasonable expectations are. And then as you meet with the city, hey guys, we're going to submit this. Can I do X, Y, and Z concurrently? Is there any reason that is there any way I can expedite this? Can I pay for expedited fees? And then, because at my scale, my size, we build 1,000 of these. We're 200 a year. We build over 1,000 of them. We know what we're doing. We got to walk as if a little bit. Like we're the experts. Whereverville, Kentucky, I'm going to build this store in your
Yeah,
town.
own
You
the
need to trust
conversation.
me that I know what I'm doing here. And so we come to them, and we try to do it without being arrogant. Easier said than done at times, but you step in there, you get folks to see not only what you want to build, that you're going to build some sort of standard, and then you make sure that you're armed with data. Okay. Now, one of the cool things about us being a young brand, social brand, everything's on social media. I have tons and tons of data, and during the discussion at the round table with the city, I can say, and they can give me all the reasons why we shouldn't do it. And I'm like, but I have data right here that says
Yeah.
there are 700 people on TikTok saying that I need to build in your market. Why would I not do this? And there's 700 influencers out here saying we need to be here. Um, and we always fight the not in my backyard type folks. Um, but what what's been a challenge for us recently has been the offsites and the terms of approval. They seem to sneak
Yeah.
those in at the 11th hour, and you're now $100,000 deep into soft cost. You're counting on this thing. You've told those bean counters you can count on this one. Take it to the bank. It's going to happen this year. And all of a sudden you get hit with something, and I example would be like Marysville, California, hit me with a list of 19 conditions of approval that were never talked about,
Yeah.
never talked about before they'd issue the building permit. And I share this story as an example of maybe a best practice. First of all, I don't think I built a store and not had to replace sidewalks in 5 years. That just happens everywhere. I mean, when you
Right.
do ground up development, but in the conditions of approval, they want me to build a new, stoplight. Now it's a brand new development. It's already a new stoplight there. Cool. Then they want me to do all kinds of things that I'm like, I don't have a lobby. I don't have a dining room. And I just said no.
Yeah.
And I called the city manager and the city building official, and they said, well, we can negotiate some of that. I said, you can. I'm not. And I just said, I'm withdrawing our application. And of course, my construction manager's losing his mind. He's like, well, we're going to miss my bonus. You're going to hit the numbers. Yeah, I don't care. We're not doing this store. We're not doing the store. And somebody from the city called and they said, well, we don't have to do this, but you have to do these 5 things. I said, no. And I just kept saying no for a week and a half without calling them. They kept calling us because I got to remember, they wanted the project as much as I did.
Right.
Yeah.
And what was amazing is they issued the permit with
Nope.
no conditions of approval. They called my construction manager to pick it up, and they said, "Just don't have Aaron call us." And I mean, but the
He's
point
the
is,
no man.
I like to say, "Nice try,"
Yeah.
because they were trying to get me. It was hundreds of thousands of dollars I was going to have to spend. Now we have a charity arm. Listen, the city wants me to write $100,000 donation to go pay for a park. Cool. I need something to do with that charity money. I'm happy to do so, but don't put it on the cost. Don't put it on the capital cost of building out one of the stores. And but when I talk to my construction managers, if they're not on a first name basis with the decision makers in the community, then they're not doing their jobs. And,
Absolutely.
and, and that's really critical.
Yeah, I think that's what it takes. And I think one of the things that when we talked, you talked about is that after COVID, it really felt like a lot of the actual knowledgeable base in cities, in development in general that you would rely on kind of dropped out of the system. And so now you have new people in there doing new jobs who don't actually have 20 years of understanding
Right.
how these things happen. So have you seen that hitting you, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, some of them just become box checkers. But to go back to what Aaron said in the beginning, I 100% agree. Getting into them early, past life with other brands that, Dutch Bros has got a lot of clout when they're building across the city. Across the U.S. Chick-fil-A's got a lot of clout when they build across the U.S. People want them there. So when you're dealing with smaller brands, we encourage our franchisees to have those conversations. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. A lot of times they think they know the mayor, but the mayor doesn't filter down
Yeah.
to the city, and or the people working there. So them trying to get in there as the owner goes, to your point, goes a long way from the beginning. Some listen, some don't. The ones that do tend to be a little bit more successful. But you do see a lot of times, they're just checking boxes at this point in time. And in some of those cases, a lot of those positions have started to become entry level type positions for,
Yeah.
for folks into the industry as well. So a lot of the long term veterans who you could go in and sit down and talk to, they're not quite there anymore. So, you're trying to build on their experience. So to Aaron's point, if you go in armed with the data and you go in armed with, kind of basically you're the expert and you're here to help them, it goes a lot longer. We
Yeah, yeah, I
we had
think
a
And we're seeing a ton of third-party plan check in all these communities
yeah,
too, where
exactly.
they're outsourcing
They're
it, and
outsourcing. Yep.
you've got the same plan checker for 5 or 6 different communities.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the thing that gets hard is that, it felt like when you had people who were more seasoned, they understood the performance aspect of what the requirements were rather
Hmm.
than just the prescriptive. And now you get someone in front of you who's like, I totally get what you want to
Yeah.
do, but my page says you need
Yeah.
4.5 of these, right? How are you solving that?
Yeah.
And
We don't do a lot of corporate stores, but we've got one right now that's been in the mix for about a year and a half, and most of it was because of permitting. We're relocating a McAllister's in Roswell, and um, our real estate folks signed an as-is lease on a old Boston market that was converted to a Mexican restaurant that prior to that was a bank, and the vault was still in the basement. So we get into it. I walk through it and I'm like, look, just need to take this down to the basement walls and start over. Oh, we can't do that. That costs too much. I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, let's see what we can save."
pay now or pay later.
And pretty much that's where we were. So we get in the middle of the project, and sure enough, it's got mold, it's got asbestos, it's got undersized structural members that don't, meet code anymore. So what happens? We take it down to the basement walls, have to resubmit. When we did that, however, DOT decided to take another bite at the apple. Oh, by the way, we didn't catch this the first time, but now you have to improve all the entrances to current, you know. And so it's been sitting there and sitting there. And until, finally we had somebody that was like, look, I need you to go to DOT. And DOT is a even worse animal than,
Oh,
the
they're,
municipalities.
yeah, they're even more removed, right?
Well, they are. They're a state agency, so they think they're above everything else. And you reach that fine line. I've got bosses that are going, "Well, you just need to go sit in their office." I'm like, "Not a DOT. DOT, you'll get kicked out, and you will never see your project get finished."
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a constant kind of understanding that municipality. It's just like anything else, trying to figure out what their goals are, and
And how you align.
and it's a massage. There's no one prescriptive way to do it. You've gotta, it's kind of like when you go to before a zoning committee. If you get the answer you want, you shut up, or you find the person who's willing to talk to you. That's the person that you cater to. You gotta be flexible in some of these things.
We you talk about pay now or pay later. I we will pay for every site investigation report. We'll pay for Matterports
Mm,
and as builts and get it done right. Because if not, we're going to pay later.
mm,
Okay,
yeah,
and it's going to slow us down, right? My stores average about $7,000 or $8,000 a day in sales. So every day I can't open that, It's money I'm not putting in the pocket. So it will, cost me $10,000 to have, Matterport or as-built done. Not a problem.
Well, and that, so we talk a little bit about the permit process and how do we help pull that forth. The other thing is that, and we talked about this, but the statistic is that the construction industry as a whole has evolved the least of any major industry since 1940. And so, buildings are basically built exactly the same way as they were in most cases. However, it has been a little bit of a subject for a while around, well, it seems as though with the labor shortage going on and why wouldn't modular be something that would really have picked up? And there was a lot of heat around it, for a lot. It was like, yeah, well, of course, you go in, and I think a lot of people thought it's almost like they're Home Depot items, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, where are my Dutch brothers? Oh, that's aisle 6 down over there, But the reality is, both of you have different levels of experience into it. I know that you've really dived deeply into it, Aaron, and I'm just interested in what your thoughts are. Is it because I think it was meant to be a big time savings, right? It was meant to be, maybe we don't save a ton of money, but
Yeah.
we get in a heck of a lot faster. We operate a lot more weeks.
Yeah. Let me say this real quick, because you've definitely got the deeper knowledge on this one. But I think the part of the issue with modular originally was it was touted as this big cost savings, and that became the driver of the conversation. Whereas that never should have been the driver. The driver should have been time savings, consistency, predictability, and supply chain. And with that, I will throw that to you.
Well,
So
we have 11 minutes for me to talk about modular.
Oh, I thought that was we only had been talking about.
Okay. No.
No.
So I love the idea of doing modular buildings.
Mm,
It's something we've done probably 100 of them, and we'll continue to play around. And I've worked with 5 or 6 manufacturers in the U.S. to be able to do so. It's not anything I currently have in development, and the reason being is the juice isn't necessarily worth the squeeze to me. And I find at times I fight my own teams more than anything else. There's a knowledge gap when it comes to something that's being pre-manufactured in a factory and then rolled out, and the installation and who's responsible for what. And I want to back up a little bit because it's maybe bigger than that. You tell me this hasn't really changed since the 40s. My most successful construction managers who work for me are, generally speaking, they're all the boomers, right? They're the older guys.
Yeah.
Generally they're veterans themselves, sons of veterans. You guys are very blue collared, take care of business, get it done guys. A lot of them come off the job sites, and they know that their job is to make stuff happen. My younger group that comes in, well, the response is, "Don't you have somebody to make this happen for me?"
Yeah.
I mean, they're not dumb people. They're just it's a different mindset when it comes to that. So when we start thinking about things like a modular building and coordination, and now it's who's responsible for what. It's that old Spider-Man meme where you've got 5 Spider-Mans pointing at each other. Do you treat the building like a piece of equipment? If you treat the building like a piece of equipment, who's responsible for it? Who's responsible for the installation? Now, then your general contractor, are they responsible for anything in the building, or is your building manufacturer responsible for anything in the building?
Right.
Now, we can write up a matrix and say who's responsible for what, but then it gets misinterpreted 7 different ways. It's like, well, and then we had to do X, Y, and Z during the installation. We have done a lot of modular buildings, and I would say at one point I was saving 22 days.
So it was a
But
time. It wasn't a
what
money. Was
what
there any money saved?
nothing really to speak of. But with our sales volumes, 22 days is
Right.
pretty good.
That's
Now, however, it wasn't as predictable as I would like it to be. I had some modular buildings sitting there ready to go, but I'm still having the same challenges waiting for utilities for the hookup. All right, and I don't know about anybody else in this room, but it seems to me like the last thing that happens in any of my stores is getting power turned on. Right, like like the last
Yeah.
major event.
That or gas.
The last major event that happens before I open the doors is legitimately getting power. So I may have saved 22 days, but it was 12 days later that the power actually, the power actually
Yeah,
got there. So
right.
I didn't save, as much. The but I really felt like I battled my own team, and I, I feel like if you're managing these projects correctly, um, if you're managing these projects correctly, you're doing it right. Um, you can build them just as quickly in the field. Now you've got challenges. You've got things like weather. You've got
Mhm.
things that'll get in the way. There's a group called Fullerton that does panelized building systems. I think a couple people asked me about those. I haven't built any Dutch Bros with Fullerton, but with other brands, with Popeyes and whatnot, I built some of those. We did in Montana before the weather got bad, and we were dried in 72 hours. I mean, it was
Wow.
great, right? You know, slabs poured, and then we were dried in. I know that there's some opportunities to be able to do that, um, but I also flash back to. I'm rambling here. I'm sorry, but
7 minutes.
yeah, and I flash back to how hard do I have to work to be your customer? And how hard do I have to work to be your customer? So a lot of times we'll talk to these modular vendors. They're like, well, we'll do the finishes in the field. Okay, well, that just means 4 more days of work in
Yeah.
the
So
field.
where was the
Okay, so
advantage?
where's my savings? We'll do X, Y, and Z in the field. Well, let's do the power differently. We'll put power on a pedestal. Well, now I've created 3 days of work in the field to create a power on a
Right.
pedestal. And so every time we push something out in the field, like now I start to defeat the purpose of trying to save time and money doing something in the factory. And that happens constantly. I also I think there's something to be said for the novelty of a modular building. The novelty of modular building, you have to educate everybody. You know, you have to these
Yes.
discussions, you have to educate everybody from the city and everybody from the inspector, and everybody has an opinion. And it becomes very, very time consuming. I just haven't found that the juice is worth the squeeze there. Um, and I don't want to make excuses for my brand either. And you know, I hear this all the time. Well, you didn't need this pop out door, and you could do the building, you know, 3 feet narrower, and you know, you didn't have to be this tall. Um, okay, great, but it's not my building anymore, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
Yeah.
and so there's been a lot of that, um, and it's just really frustrating at
Yeah.
times. Now, there's some people out there doing a great job with modular buildings. You know, Rallies and Checkers does a pretty good job with it.
Mhm.
They're very happy with what they do. I mean, my competitor Seven Brews doing some decent looking modular buildings out there,
Yeah.
and I mean, God bless them, man. They're doing a good job with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask, the audience that, is there anyone who's sitting out there that is like, well, we just love it. It's doing great for us. We've figured it out. We have the matrix, or is everyone kind of having that same level of experience on this? And it's not like I can see you.
Yeah. You
So
got to
if
speak
you
up.
are raising your hand, I'm sorry I can't.
Yeah.
But I think, it's interesting because with 5 minutes to go, I want to transition into the fact that, look, it's really easy, I think, sometimes to get a little bit bleak, right? It's like, Costco one way,
Yeah.
challenging gets challenging, but is there a silver lining, out there as far as, what actually, because a lot of times in chaos creates a lot of opportunity, right? And it sometimes makes you actually go back and do things, reevaluate things, push things, find opportunities that maybe when, like you said, money was cheap, you didn't worry about that much because, hey, I can just do it. Anything for you that comes out on that to share?
I mean, you've heard a lot about it over the last couple of days. Is new technologies, and I think walk-ons talked about it a little bit. Is applying that technology to the kitchen. So I think for us, from an overall standpoint, we've all lived this. I mean, I mentioned it earlier. Is every time we talk about cost, it immediately the conversation turns to design and construction and building materials, that sort of thing. I think the silver lining in this is I think now organizations have woken up to the idea that, okay, I don't have to do everything exactly the way I used to do it.
Yeah.
So this is how we've always done it. This is how, I think just what's happened in the last 5 years has woken everybody up to that, as well as it's advanced a lot of the AI and technology things, just as far as equipment and pre-programming and that sort of thing that saves time and labor. So I think it's opened up a broader conversation that folks in this room, we don't just all we're not the ones always bearing the cost of trying to find money in terms of reducing costs. It becomes a across the organization conversation at this point in time. And I think everybody's more bought into that, which helps all of us at the end of the day. So,
You know, I'm reminded we get to do this, right?
yeah.
Like we get to do this, and I mean, if
We
it
get
was,
to have this struggle.
yeah, and if it, and you know, my job, you know, we talk about this every week, but it's to create a compelling future, you know, for the operating partners, franchisees that run our stores and in those communities and whatnot. So Um, is there a silver lining? You know, the silver lining is having these tough conversations with the communities and the cities and fighting that good battle with my suppliers. I'm able to bring a lot of second generation spaces, third generation spaces back to life,
Mm.
you know, and I'm able to create that. We're able to create some jobs. And then what I hope is just with my kind of aggressive strategy with these cities, they're learning something. And so, while listen, I know I'm a big personality. I can go and I can talk and I can argue. But if you know somebody is not quite there,
Yeah, you might be the first person
I'm
people
hoping
call.
I'm paving the way a little bit
Right.
to be able to make that little bit easier for them. You know, and then I think other silver linings are we have forced ourselves to find backup suppliers and hold ourselves accountable when it comes to cost and whatnot. And so start to make sure we're probably asking deeper questions than we ever did before. And talk about whether it be a tile supplier and how long is this going to last, or a flooring supplier. Um, Now it's like, what are the tariffs on this floor? And I'd never considered this floor from Norway until yesterday, when
Right.
now all of a sudden I realize there's no tariffs coming out of Norway. And he showed me a photo of a floor from 1989. Well, holy crap, maybe that's something I need to be considering, right? This
Yeah.
thing, and that's the type of stuff that when I look for silver linings, it's the small, you know,
It
it's
stretches you.
yeah,
It'll stretch you.
it's the
It
small
forces
battles
you
you're
to
going to
be
win
more
on.
creative
Yeah,
and have those deeper conversations that you didn't have before. So,
Absolutely. Well, hey, we have just about 2 minutes, and I don't know. I guess I'd hate to be sitting up here and miss an opportunity if people have questions to ask, to the group. I think that Z, I don't know if you have a microphone. Is there anyone? Unless we were like perfect and we covered like everything you wanted to hear. I would hope that maybe there's a question or two.
I hear a corner. I hear the word. I hear the word corner.
I heard the word corner. Yeah. It,
Good luck.
it's tough. I've been there, and some of this I'm very much a relationship person from that standpoint in terms with suppliers. I think uh, D- Dave's Hot Chicken mentioned it. Ultimately, I want suppliers to be partners. I'm a little old school from that standpoint. So it may not benefit you immediately, but over time it will. And yeah, it's hard to leverage scale. I know we're up here talking about 100 stores and 300 stores and that sort of thing. Um, it's tough because I've been there, and you just kind of got to slog. And it's not a good answer, but you just kind of got to slog through it a little bit and find the folks that are willing to partner with you, and that are not interested in just, hey, how much are you selling? And they're out there, but you have to kind of dig a little bit deeper with some of them.
Yeah, and I think it's the same battle. It's just a different scale, right?
But
Yeah.
I would also say that whether it's a 5 store chain or a 5,000 store chain, like when I'm having a conversation with the city, I'm going to have some data behind me, and I'm sure there's data around your 5 stores that that you could use in some sort of social media
Hmm.
metric. It won't be at the same scale as to what I have, but you could have some fun with it, maybe enhance it. Nobody in the city's going to fact check that when you hit them with all the numbers. Right?
Yeah.
They're
True.
just not.
You said you have 650 stores?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Anyone else?
I think that's all the time we have.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
20 seconds. There you
And
go.
now it's going up.
No,
Uh-oh.
now we're over.
Oh, we got over.
Sorry, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Take care. Hey,
Thank
thank
y'all.
you. Thank you very much, Aaron. I really appreciate it.